Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. I, of course, am Carl, and we are coming back to you with another episode of Vacuum's Exposition, because we are looking at technically two, call it what you will, whether that be a September knockoff post, or what have you, but these two machines that I'm taking a look at today with you guys are very, very special, at least to vacuum cleaner history, for a lot of people. But before we get into that, of course, we are still in September, and I know that I have decorated a little bit early for spooky season, for Halloween and everything. But truth be told, I do absolutely love the whole fall, Halloween, Thanksgiving time frame season. I, of course, live in Washington State, so when it starts getting orange out, the whole area around me just kind of explodes in a red, orange, brown, yellow, mural of beauty. So I tend to live it up as much as I can, which is why I got all my lights going. And I continue to add to my interior decor. So currently, at least in my little corner here, we have, of course, the Ghost Rider from Marvel. I have a limited edition poster that I got a long, long time ago that actually goes with a very big collection of Ghost Rider comic books that I have, that I kind of amassed during my college time frame. But of course I also have my purple and orange lights that actually go up and around the entire ceiling of my apartment, at least in the laundry room. Of course there is a thing that says boo behind me. You can't really see just because the light kind of shines right off of it. And then of course the Ghostbusters car up above it, from the Ghostbusters movie. That is a Lego model that I absolutely adore, that a friend of mine got for me for a birthday. My good friend Dan, who we've talked about, who's also supported the channel in getting us some vacuum cleaners over the years. But anyway, so be prepared. We're going to be celebrating, of course, more and more of the spooky season. Gonna hopefully try to get some more orange vacuum cleaners on the channel, kind of match up with the time frame. Last year I kind of did a movie monster type theme, with the different phantom vacuum cleaners. Kind of did kind of a special for the month of October with those, but we'll see. I'm still kind of throwing around a couple ideas, seeing what sticks. But anyways, let's get on to our video for today and take a look at these really cool machines. All right, everybody, so we have got two very special machines to take a look at today. Now, for those that don't know the brand, so where these two hail from is the Interstate Compact or Interstate Engineering brand, or IEC. Now, IEC was introduced way back when, in the mid-40s. They started producing vacuum cleaners and development in about 1946, and then continued all the way into about the 70s when, the transferring of the designs happened, and the design, similar to this, continued under the TriStar name. Now, these two machines are very, very interesting to that history, and I'll get into that in just a bit. But I know they look very, very similar. As you can see, they're basically the same type of dark, dull gray, and really, aside from some little stylization changes, they're basically the same looking machine. However, they're very, very different. Now, what we have down here is the 1946 Compact or Interstate Model C-1. This, my friends, is the granddaddy of this vacuum design. This design where you had a motor back here, exhaust coming out the back, and the suction coming through the hole right here, going into a bag inside here. As we can see, we have a brand new bag that is actually labeled under IEC or Interstate Engineering. Very, very cool that it still has an original bag in it. Now, this, like I said, is the grandfather of all those machines. So if you look at a TriStar or a Compact or a Airstorm or any of those machines that utilize this type of design, it all comes from this machine right here. This machine, like I said, it was developed in 1946. They started selling it in about 1948. And it had a very simple design. Now, originally, this machine would not have actually come with wheels. This actually has 2 wheels and then 2, rounded areas of metal that it would just kind of ride on. I'll show it right here real quick. As you can see, they're just these rounded castings in the metal. They're actually quite flat now, but they would have originally been round. And then 2 Bakelite wheels on each side. Now, that same design would essentially continue into this particular machine. But the important thing about these is originally they would have actually had sled runners, kind of like an Electrolux or that Model 60 we took a look at. That had sled runners. But the prototype for this machine, and I'll actually show a picture of it right here. As you can see, did have a very, very similar design to this. The labeling on the side actually was almost exactly like the prototype, but this did have those rounded parts at the front and wheels in the back, whereas the prototype would have had the sled runners. And they made the actual production machine have more of a stylized cap here. So it's not just flat with kind of like a hose bend to connect to the hose. Now, that being said, this machine is very, very special because not many of these are even out there now, because originally these were sold to be utilized and used on airplanes. So specifically, I've seen pictures of them on McDonnell Douglas DC-3s to be used, well, as interior cleaners, being that they could kind of follow the user around with the wheels. It kind of steered it a little bit better than you would with the runners that tended to get stuck or just continue going straight wherever they were pointed. So these are getting very, very hard to find, if not extremely hard to find. Well, because if you think about the time frame that they were in, that's going on, the better part of 70 years ago. And that is just incredible that we still have any of them around. Now, this is a very, very heavy casing of metal here. So this machine actually weighs a good amount. But it does have some stylistic points to it that are different to the models following, which brings us to this one. Now, this is about a 1950 to 1957 compact Model C-2, as you can imagine. Being that the C-1 was a success, this machine did have a lot of carryover features that were significant for these machines, but it did have some changes. Now, as we can see on the C-2, it looks very similar to the C-1, especially in color. However, I know it's kind of hard to tell, but the hose inlet on the C1 and the C2 are actually different. The C2 has more of a swoop back all the way design, where this one has kind of like a twist upwards for the hose. So this one making it a little bit more seamlessly curving down. Now, the big thing about the C2 is it actually had a bumper put on. So if you were using it around the house, it would kind of bump into the walls and things without scraping up against something like the side of the machine, which was the case for the C1. In addition to that, the C1 actually came apart at the back. So the way you would access the motor from here was you would take this whole piece off back here, whereas the C2 and following models all came across right here at the middle where the bumper is. So there's a bunch of screws that are secured up from underneath. You would undo that and this just splits apart, easy lickety split, no problem. In addition to all of that, the C2 had another stylistic choice that really didn't necessarily need to be, but they put it in, which would be a switch cover on the back. Now, when you're using a switch like that, it can definitely be a toe stubber for sure. Now, with the C2, they had this nice stylistic plate that went over it, and thus you wouldn't stub your toe necessarily. I mean, you could technically, I suppose, but it was a lot more easier on the foot in order to just click down like that rather than finding this switch right here and clicking it down, same kind of difference. But in addition to that, they also, well, both of these were kind of a hammer tone paint. You definitely saw it more with the C-2 and following machines, as well as they didn't continue an all around the body kind of labeling. They just continued with a labeling right here. Now, later models, of course, would have a lot different labeling and emblems that would be on the side here. Some were even full 3D, pieces that would glue to the side and whatnot. But they did advertise this one with a lot more features. Now, I didn't find a lot of ads for the C-1, if actually at all. So I looked forever to find anything, and there really isn't a whole lot out there aside from the history of the company. Now for the C-2, I did manage to find some ads which did mention all the attachments that came with these machines, and that I will show right here. Now, as we can see, the elephant in the room, if you will, is the big red case right here. Now, this is what we consider a hassock. It is essentially a very nice piece of furniture that you would put your vacuum cleaner in the 1950s all the way up through the 70s and 80s, in which case the vacuum and all of its attachments would be enclosed. And we will clear these vacuums and show the interior of this and do kind of an unboxing real quick right here. All right, folks, so we've got your standard issue attachments. We've got your extension wands, we have your floor tool, and then a random crevice tool real quick. We also have a floor brush, which I don't know if that is 100% original to this machine, but you have to remember that this machine is, like I said, about 70 years old, so it is definitely aged to the point where maybe your attachments aren't all original anymore. And if you ask me, that is okay. If you have any attachments left over after 50 years, I would be shocked. Especially if they're replacements or not, I would be shocked. But either way, we do have some other things in here. We have the endo moth, which is a mothamizer that would kind of go on the end of your hose, which you would blow your assorted moth crystals. Essentially what you would do, from what I can tell, is you would take this attachment and you would fill it with the moth crystals in here. And then there was a grate right here that you would blow all over your assorted furs and long coats and things to make sure that moths didn't eat them. This one definitely has been aged quite a bit, and it is definitely getting on the more vulcanized side, if I may say. So it is probably not going to be used again for moth eradication. But still very cool attachment. I'm not 100% sure if this is original to this machine, but very cool to see one. They're always in such different, types and shapes and sizes. Some even have a whole jar. So finding one that's just kind of simple like this, very cool. Now, next up, we do have a dusting brush, which does appear to be original to the machine, except for somebody took a bite out of it. So somebody got hungry along the lifetime of this machine, but still very good to see in here. Now, like I said, there is this crevice tool, but it is probably a replacement. It does match the machine, oddly enough, but I'm sure that that is a replacement just because, that type of plastic didn't come out until like the 70s or 80s, so most likely a replacement. Now, of course, the man of the hour, if you will, the hose. Now, the hose, of course, it's not in the greatest of shape. It does have a little bit of a tape job right here, as well as a little bit of staining from over the years, but it's still important that we have it, and I'm so thankful that it is here. So here is our original hose, and that's going to do it for our little tour here in the hassock. Now, these hassocks were entirely useful for, caring for your vacuum cleaner, because it was all too often that, unfortunately, the canister vacuum in the house got beat up. Now, neither the C-1 or C-2 are in the greatest of shape, just because they were used pretty hard over the years. But it's still important that they even exist, because once they are gone, we lose that history in them. So they are very, very interesting machines in them of itself. Now, through my research, I have found that while hassocks were not necessarily always sold by the vacuum cleaner company or dealer, with the vacuum cleaner, or for the vacuum cleaner specifically. I was able to find in different catalogs and things over the years that the hassocks were actually an additional accessory you could buy for your house. So say you bought a canister vacuum cleaner at some point in your life and you needed something to protect it with. Because unfortunately canister vacuums tended to get really beat up as well. They were drug along the ground. So certainly they scraped against walls and all kinds of things. And if they didn't have the bumper like the C-2, well, they got pretty well beat either way, even if they weren't even being used. So you could actually buy a hassock alone without the vacuum cleaner. Now, I did want to mention the hassock in this because I have a lot of them in my collection, several of them being Interstate compact vacuum cleaners. But I did want to do a little bit more on the history of them, and we'll take a look at way more of them. Like I said, have many of them, but they are an important piece of vacuum cleaner history, as well as vacuum cleaner care, just because it did keep them safe. But anyways, let's get on to our run demo for today and see how these two do on the floor. I do have a hose for the C-1, but unfortunately, I think it got moved to one of the different units away from the machine, so we'll probably take a look at that at a different time. But either way, they do run about the same, have the same amount of power, so we will still run it, and I will show you the differences between, in the sound at least, and we'll see how the C-2 does on the floor. All right, everybody, so we have the C-2 all plugged in and ready to go. Now, before that, of course, like I said, we will show the sound of the C-1 to see how that one sounds, of course, just to kind of give you guys an overview on, well, the loudness factor that these old Interstate compacts have. So let's see how that C-1 sounds, and then get on to seeing how the C-2 does on the floor. Well, and that's how loud the compact or Interstate model C-1 sounds. Of course, you won't hear very much different from the C-2, but let's see how that one does on the floor. And there you have it, folks. The compact C-2 still doing floors like it was 1952. So very, very nice machine. Of course, it makes complete sense as to why they continued to make this, well, all the way to today, basically, because this design is flawless. It makes a lot of power, a lot of suction, and thus does a really good job on the floor. So, but I hope you guys all enjoyed our little run demo for today. Well, everybody, we have come to the end of another episode today, and a fun one it was. Now, I know that these aren't always everybody's cup of tea, mostly because they are kind of boring in terms of looks, in terms of their, well, overall bland gray coloring, and just lackluster performance in certain ways. But they're important to vacuum cleaner history, and they're important because they are the earliest form of a long line of evolution of this particular design. Now, while Interstate Engineering may not be producing the vacuum anymore, the design continued on for well into the future. So to see the beginning of it, the earliest form of it, the Prometheus, if you will, of this particular brand or design, well, it's very special. And I hope you guys all feel the same by the end of this. these machines, while they aren't the most interesting to look at, they have basically started that history that got this company on the map, that got this design on the map, and thus put them in the homes and houses of millions of Americans and more, being as these machines traveled across the whole world, even extending all the way into places like Japan and different areas of Europe. So they are something to behold in them of themselves. So, but I hope you guys all enjoyed our little video for today. I know they weren't the most interesting, but hey, it's so interesting to find some of these older machines, especially things like the C-1, being as that there's maybe less than a handful even known to exist still. So I'm very proud to have them. They were both gifts from my good friend Jared, different times, of course. I got the C-1 from him, and I believe he got it from a thrift store of some sort, but I got that from him at one point, and then the C-1 I believe I got from him on one of his more recent vacuum purges. So either way, I'm very, very happy to have both of them. The C-2 is in fantastic shape. The C-1, while it is pretty beat up, it is still a great machine and very important to the history of vacuum cleaners. And you know, someday when I get my museum all set up, I can't wait to display them together for once, and you know, basically display that particular part of vacuum cleaner history. So, but I hope you guys all enjoyed everything today. I hope you guys all have, of course, another great week and another weekend following. I have a trip coming up in a couple weeks, so there may be a delay or two in some of the next videos, but as well as I start school tomorrow, Monday. But anyways, you guys have a great rest of your week, and we'll catch you again in the next one. Have a great rest of your day, y'all.